what if everything you thought you knew about staying healthy, from the ingredients in your food to the policies governing your freedom of choice, was actively designed by the very systems that profit from your continuous illness?
That is really the provocative central idea,
Right.
running through this whole stack of sources we've been analyzing for this deep dive.
Right.
We're looking at documents that investigate this current atmosphere of massive uncertainty. You see it everywhere: health security, food systems, individual liberty.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to dissect the claims from these sources that these powerful, consolidated forces, we're talking industrial food producers all the way up to global health organizations, that they're creating conditions that fundamentally undermine your health and, your ability to make your own choices.
Exactly. And the sources present this as a critical concern. They talk about a systematic failure of oversight and this constant push for centralized control over what should be very private health decisions.
We're going to have to unpack the evidence they present on industrial food additives, the economic structure of big agriculture.
And some historical medical controversies that, frankly, force us to look critically at the scientific authority we take for granted. The sources seem to suggest that real resilience means rejecting these manufactured norms.
Yeah, and instead choosing a path of traditional wisdom and really self-governance.
That's the core of it. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's start with what we're all consuming. I mean, let's go way beyond just calories and look at the hidden dangers engineered into ultra-processed food.
Right.
The sources are really clear on this. Without manufactured flavor enhancers, a huge chunk of Big Food's inventory just wouldn't be palatable enough to sell.
And the undisputed heavy hitter here is manufactured free glutamate, or MFG. Most of us just know it as MSG.
And the sources connect this directly to the obesity epidemic.
Very directly. I think you saw that statistic that was just staggering.
Yeah, I did. 80% of food consumed by humans today contains MSG. How can the sources make such a direct causal link between a flavor enhancer and, well, systemic obesity?
They point to two main mechanisms that are sort of intertwined. First, MSG is used to mask these unpleasant, often chemical off flavors you get in cheap processed ingredients.
So it tricks your brain.
It absolutely tricks your brain into accepting something your body might otherwise reject. It gives that, that umami taste to otherwise bland products.
Okay, and the second mechanism.
This is the critical one. MFG is defined as an excitotoxic ingredient.
Excitotoxic. Let's break that down for everyone. It's more than just brain damaging.
It is. It refers to your nerve cells, your neurons, being overstimulated, excited, to the point where the cell itself gets damaged or just dies.
And the claim is that the amount in our food is enough to do this.
The sources claim that the quantity of MFG routinely used in processed foods is sufficient to cause physical lesions in the hypothalamus.
Actual lesions?
Yes, specifically wiping out brain cells in the arcuate nucleus.
And why is that specific area so important?
Because that region is the master control center. It regulates satiety and appetite. It's what tells you you're full.
So if an ingredient essentially obliterates the body's natural stop signal,
the result is predictable, isn't it? Hyperconsumption, weight gain, and of course, increased profits for the food industry. MFG basically removes the biological governor on eating.
That's a perfect illustration of how a chemical function can directly drive a profit model over public health. Okay, let's shift from manufactured flavor to manufactured texture. We need to talk about modified food starches.
Yes, the fat mimetics.
That's what the manufacturers call them. Why are they so in love with these things, especially in low-fat products?
Well, fat mimetics are an engineered solution to a big problem. When you strip the fat out of a food product, the texture becomes, well, it's terrible. Watery, gritty, just unappealing.
So these starches are like a filler.
Kind of like a highly processed plaster, yeah. They bind water and create that rich, fat-like mouthfeel that consumers want, but without the calories or stability issues of real fat.
So they fulfill an industrial need: texture, moisture, shelf life. But what about the health cost to the consumer?
The list is pretty substantial. The sources link these starches to increased risks for diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, and, again, significant weight gain.
And where do these starches come from?
Many are derived from GMO corn. And what's really interesting, the wheat-derived starches often carry a risk of glyphosate contamination, which is used to dry out the crops before harvest.
And here's where it gets really illuminating.
Yep.
the sources point out that the antidote is incredibly simple.
It is. If you just eat a traditional, cooked-from-scratch diet using whole ingredients, you completely bypass this entire category of industrial engineering and all its associated risks.
You just opt out.
You opt out. And this industrial assault, it isn't just in the pantry. It permeates the whole supply chain, especially with corporate control over agriculture.
Right, let's talk about the cattle industry. The sources suggest it's rigged.
Heavily rigged against both the farmer and you, the consumer.
Mm.
The consolidation is just stunning.
What are the numbers?
Just four. Four large beef packing companies control more than 80% of the entire cattle industry market.
4 companies, that's not a market, that's a cartel. What kind of economic impact does that have?
The documents analyze periods of market disruption where this was all laid bare. You'd see live cattle prices drop by nearly 20% for the ranchers,
So the people raising the animals lose money.
while at the exact same time, wholesale beef prices would increase by as much as 115% for the processors.
That's just a massive wealth transfer. The consumer pays more, the rancher gets less, and the corporate processors in the middle just rake it in.
And this profit motive is often reinforced by government regulation. Take the USDA's push for an electronic ID system. They want farmers to buy and tag every head of cattle with an RFID chip,
How much do those cost?
between $2 and $2.60 per head.
Okay, so what was the cost of the old system? I mean, for safety and tracking.
The old traditional metal tags cost 10 cents, and they used to be provided for free by the USDA.
Wait, from free to over $2 a head.
Exactly. So this new mandate funnels millions of dollars directly to specific tag manufacturers. The sources argue it's not really about food safety for you. It's about maximizing corporate profits by making large-scale international export and import easier,
While putting a huge financial burden on smaller family-run farms.
who have to comply to stay in business.
You know, this skepticism toward these centralized, expert-driven systems, it finds a really fascinating echo when you look back at medical history. Let's talk about Louis Pasteur.
It's a profound historical challenge. The sources suggest that much of what was recorded in 19th century Europe as anthrax deaths in sheep might have actually been arsenic poisoning.
Arsenic, from where?
From the ubiquitous use of arsenic-based sheep dip, it was everywhere.
That's a radical claim. How similar are the symptoms? Could they really be confused?
They're remarkably similar. Arsenic poisoning causes black skin lesions, severe swelling, rapid death. It historically overlaps almost perfectly with the descriptions of anthrax.
So the argument is that the rise of germ theory, this idea that one microbe causes one disease.
It encouraged scientists like Pasteur to focus exclusively on finding a microbial enemy and developing a quick fix, like a vaccine.
And in that scientific rush, they missed the simpler, non-microbial poison right under their noses.
That's the argument. They cite historical records where Pasteur's vaccine failed spectacularly. For instance, in one documented case in southern Russia, the anthrax vaccines reportedly killed 81% of the sheep that received them.
81%.
It's unbelievable. The lesson offered, which reflects the older terrain theory, is that when the use of that toxic arsenic sheep dip finally fell out of favor, these mystery sheep deaths declined dramatically.
Regardless of vaccination status.
Regardless, it just encourages a healthy dose of skepticism when modern science rushes past simpler environmental or nutritional explanations.
Speaking of toxic factors, let's talk about one that's pervasive in the modern diet. Excess iron.
Yes, a critical and, I think, often criminally ignored toxicant.
We all know iron is essential for life, but the sources emphasize that old adage, the dose makes the poison. Why is iron overload such a pressing issue today?
Because the standard American diet is just saturated with iron-fortified processed foods, cereals, breads, you name it. And this leads to a state of chronic excess for so many people.
Okay, but doesn't the body just get rid of what it doesn't need?
That's the crucial biological insight. The human body has this amazing regulated intelligence to absorb more iron when you're deficient. But it lacks a powerful mechanism to do the reverse. There's effectively no regulated iron excretion in overload.
So once that excess iron is in, it's basically trapped.
Exactly. It accumulates in major tissues, the liver, the heart, the joints, and critically, the brain. It acts as a primary toxicant.
How so?
Because iron participates in something called the Fenton reaction, which generates these highly destructive reactive oxygen species. It causes severe oxidative damage. In simple terms, it causes you to rust from the inside out.
Rust from the inside out. That's a profound image. Which chronic diseases are most clearly influenced by this?
Nearly every inflammatory chronic disease we struggle with today. obesity, type 2 diabetes, and severe neurodegeneration, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's.
And this is made worse by medical advice.
It can be. The sources reveal that a staggering 72% of pregnant women and 60% of lactating women in the U.S. currently take an iron-containing supplement, constantly adding to this toxic burden.
This brings us right to the core issue of personal freedom, doesn't it? If these established, centralized systems are so demonstrably flawed, why are powerful global figures so insistent on removing personal choice?
You have to look at the stated agenda. The sources quote Bill Gates directly, who asserted, "We will only return to normality worldwide when all 7 billion people have been vaccinated."
That's an alarming statement. It basically makes individual liberty conditional.
It's entirely dependent upon mandatory universal compliance, dictated not by patient choice or a democratic process, but by, a global corporate and wealth consensus.
Especially given the risks the sources cite about new medical technologies being rolled out so quickly. The RNA-based vaccine strategy, for instance, is noted as a technology that had never been used in humans before.
And it was rushed without the typical decades-long safety testing timelines. The history of rushed vaccines gives us crucial reasons for caution here. The sources highlight the severe risk of immune priming, or pathogenic priming.
Can you explain that mechanism? What is pathogenic priming?
Essentially, the initial vaccine exposure can teach the immune system a very specific and sometimes suboptimal response. So when the actual natural pathogen is encountered later, the body's programmed response is ineffective or, worse, aggressively harmful.
It causes an overreaction.
A fatal overreaction in some cases. It leads to heightened disease severity, not protection. We saw this tragically in earlier SARS and dengue vaccine campaigns.
So given that documented risk, the freedom to choose becomes an essential safeguard.
It has to be, especially when the pharmaceutical companies often have zero liability for their products.
Okay, so if the conventional centralized system is fragile and potentially rigged against us, where do the sources point for true resilience?
They point us back to the proven path, traditional wisdom and nutrient density. A great example is raw milk.
Raw milk, okay.
Humans have consumed animal milk for at least 10,000 years. The sources argue very convincingly that what we call lactose intolerance is often, in large part, pasteurization intolerance.
Why that distinction?
Because raw milk contains live bacteria and enzymes that actively help your body produce the lactase enzyme in the gut. Pasteurization destroys all of that. It degrades the nutrients. Pasteurization makes up only 1% of the entire history of human milk consumption. It's a very recent, very artificial intervention.
And circling back to that critical issue of toxic iron overload, the traditional answer is there too.
It is, in wise food consumption, specifically organ meats. The sources highlight the massive value of incorporating liver into your diet.
Why liver specifically?
Liver, for example, contains twice as much copper as iron. And copper is absolutely essential for the body to properly regulate, bind, and recycle that toxic excess iron. Traditional diets, like those in Morocco, understood this mineral balance intuitively.
So, at the end of the day, the defense against this fragile industrial system is self-sufficiency.
And preparedness. The disruptions of 2020 showed the resilience of the local food system, right? It stood in stark contrast to large producers who wasted hundreds of millions of pounds of food because their rigid supply lines just couldn't adjust.
Right.
So a shift to local sourcing is critical. The sources encourage growing your own food, connecting with local suppliers, even reviving simple methods like root cellars, which preserve far more nutritional value than canning or freezing. It's a reclaiming of personal sovereignty.
To sum it all up, this deep dive has laid bare the claims that powerful industrial forces are profiting from regulatory failure, misinformation, and fear to promote these centralized systems. We've tracked that from additives in the pantry all the way to the urgent threat of mandatory health decisions.
I think the key takeaway from all this research is that our commitment to personal health, consciously avoiding refined foods, balancing our minerals, seeking out local, nutrient-dense food, is fundamentally an act of self-governance. It's really the most powerful defense we have against external control.
So if powerful corporations and global billionaires insist on universal mandatory control over your diet and your most private health choices, what does that revelation suggest about the true critical value of your personal freedom? That's the question you have to carry forward.